Hi guys, welcome back to a new video on Angular 16. In this video, I will be covering all the topics that I have explained in the last 13 videos. Means that I will be creating a small note-taking CRUD application, and in this application, I will be using all the concepts like the directives, interfaces, forms, reactive forms, services, state management, Rxjs, input output decorators, so that you can revise all those concepts that you have been learning from the start of the first video. So let's get started. I've created an empty Angular 16 project, as you can see on my screen. So I have this folder structure by default. So let's go inside the app directory, and I'm gonna go inside the HTML. So first of all, I'm going to remove everything that is inside it. And in this component, let's remove this title as well. All right, first of all, I'll be creating few folder structure. So what I need is I need an interface for the note. I need couple of components, one component for the form and another component for listing down all those notes that will be generated through that form. And then I will be creating a service that will be used to share data between the form component and the list node component actually. So I'm in this directory. So let's go inside the CRUD app folder. So inside it, let's first create couple of components. So I'll be using the Angular CLI. I'll be writing the ngg for generate, C for component. Let's create a components folder, and inside it, I'm going to create node-form. Let's hit enter. So this component have been generated, you can see over here. Let's create another component, so that will be the note-list. Hit enter. So another component have been generated. So we have generated two components. Let's generate a service as well. So I will be writing the nggs, and then I will be writing the services, and then slash, let's name it note. Okay, so you can see services folder have been generated. And next I need an interface. So ngg, I've never generated an interface through CLI. Let's try to write an I actually. Let's see if it works. So I for interface, and I'm going to name it interfaces slash and then the note. Okay, so let's hit enter. And yes, this have been generated. Node.ts interface is here, and we have the services, we have the components. So I think we are done with generating different files. Let's go inside our app.module.ts, and inside it, these components have been added directly over here. First of all, I'll be finalizing this module so that I can have the services, components, and different form modules available or throughout my application. I hope that you have seen my previous videos about the reactive forms, HTTP client requests, and app routing module and all this stuff. If you don't know, I'll be trying to explain each and every step that I'm writing over here. First of all, I'll be needing few steps over here to be added in our components. Okay, so this have been out of the benefit of generating the component through CLI is that it automatically added over here and automatically added in this declaration folder. So first of all, what I need is I need an HTTP client module, so that I can call some APIs if I need to. And then I need the form modules because I will be creating the form for creating a new node. So make sure you add these files. So then I have this routing module, app module, and then I will be having the services that I've just generated. Okay, so here I have these 10 lines of imports. Okay, now I need to add these in my I don't need to write anything in the declaration array, but here I will be needing the HTTP client module, forms module, and the reactive form modules. HTTP client module, form modules, and the reactive form modules. Okay, and this services class needs to be added in this provider. We can also add the services in the providers array of any component, but that will only be usable in that component. Adding the service over here means that this service can be used in all the components that we create in our project. Okay, so that's pretty much it we need to do in this particular file. I don't want to come back to this file. That's why I've added all the files and the required modules at the start of this video. Okay, so let's close it. And now let's go inside my app.component.html. Let's first try to run. What we see, it should not show anything. So npm run start should actually start the project. So I'm gonna go inside the package.json file. So yes, this is the start command. So this has to be working in the local host colon 4200. So let's refresh it. So this is the Chrome browser that I've opened. It's white because this HTML does not have anything. Okay, that's fine. Let's try to add an HTML over here. So first of all, I'm going to add a div class. So let's give it a class app-container. Okay, and inside this div, I'll be writing the h1. So let's add the title note taking app. All right. And after this, I will be needing to actually call those couple of components that I have generated. So first I need to show the, let's go ahead and see what are the selectors for that. First of all, for the form, let's go to the component. So this is the selector for the form, and I'm going to be adding its selector over here. And next we will be having the app dot note, and I hope that it will be a list. All right, so let's save it now. Let's go and see. Yes, so this is the title and this is the default text coming from those components. Let's try to zoom in. Yes, you can see over here. So it means that our components are loading fine. All right, I'm going to copy paste the CSS. I will be explaining once I write it down over here. So this is the CSS. It's pretty simple. I don't want to waste your time to actually start writing each and every line of code. So we have this class and then we have the h1. Let's save it. And now you can see it is now centered, and this is not being applied anything over here, but that's fine for now. I'll be writing the CSS directly in its specific components. All right, so let's close it. Let's go over here. I don't think I need to add anything in this component as of now, but when I will be actually communicating the data from form component to the list component, or from the list component back to the form component, I will show you how we can do it using the input output decorator. I'll be showing the two ways of the state management in this video. All right, we can create the note taking app in a simple single component, but I'm making it a bit complex so that you can understand the concepts of Angular actually. So let's build up a form now. You can see that this text is coming from the node form component. I'm just going to remove everything from here, and I'm going to remove, there is no actually variable over here. All right, so I will be using the form builder. That's why I imported the form module and the reactive form module in my app.module.ts file, and I will be importing few stuff at the top first to actually create the form. I'll be using the concept of the reactive forms in this video. So this is what you need to import from the Angular forms. I will be using the form builder, form group, validator form, and I also need to actually import an interface. So let's first go ahead quickly, and I'm going to create a new interface over here just in 1 minute. Okay, so what we have is we will be having an ID of a node that will be used to actually delete a node or an edit a node, you can say. So then we will be having a title, and that will be of type string, and then I will be having the content of type string, and that's it for this file. Okay, this interface is actually is the data type of any variable that we want to initialize in any of our component. That can be used as a return type of a function, that can be used as a param to any function. Okay, I'll just show you what do I mean by that. So let's now import that node interface that I have just created, and here I will be writing import. Let's write the node, and it will show me the interface path. Hit enter. So this node have been imported. All right, and after this, inside this core, I will be using the input. I will be using the on init in this component. I will be using the on changes hook in this component, and I'll be using the simple changes hook in this component. All right, I've already created videos on Angular that explains all 8 lifecycle hooks of Angular. You can check out the playlist Angular tutorials on my channel. I've given the link of that playlist in the description of this video. I've also talked about each and every concept as well: state management, behavior subject, NGRX, Angular universals, server side rendering, client side rendering. Everything is covered on my channel already. You can check out that playlist. All right, so make sure you add these. I also need to import the services as well. There is nothing inside the services as of now, but let's import that, so we don't need to import it after that. So node service from src slash services node dot service. All right, so this have been imported. All right, after this we don't need to make anything over here, and in this component I will start actually using these above packages that I have imported. First of all, I'm going to implement the ng on init and ng on changes. Let's remove it for now. I don't need it as of now. All right, and let's try to import ng on init over here. All right, now the error is gone. Ng on init is a function, built-in function in Angular that automatically triggers whenever this component gets initialized. All right, so I will be initializing few of the variables, maybe an API call or anything else that I want to do. So in this function that I want it to be automatically triggered, I want to build a form, and I will be using this form builder and the validators to create that form. So in this lifecycle hook, first of all, let's create a variable for the form. So I'll be writing the node form, and this is of type form group. We need to actually give it some value, but initially if we want to make it optional, let's add exclamation mark after the name and the error is gone. Okay, so in this way I will be using this node form. I can access any variables, and then I can use the form group, or I can use the form builder that I have actually added above. But before that, I need to create an instance of these in the constructor. So I will be writing the constructor. If you have learned object-oriented programming in any language, you know that there is a constructor. Private, we can have the node service, we can have the private, and we can have the form builder from form builder. All right, so this have been added. Now we can use these objects of these classes to actually call any of its internal functions. So since we need to use form builder, it provides us different functions. All right, so now let's use this form builder. Form builder gives us a group. All right, and this is an object. Inside this object I can actually add an ID. I can add the title, and what would be the initial value of the title? I want the text box empty at the start. Okay, and then I will be using the validators required. And the benefit of creating these forms directly over here is that we can directly add some validations over here, and it gives us a lot of built-in functions like is valid, is invalid, or is and a lot of functions that I'll just show you. Okay, so now I will be not this is actually the title. Okay, let's add the content, and content is actually I would say an empty. Okay, I won't keep it required, but you can require it if you want. Okay, that's pretty much it for this particular lifecycle hook. And now let's go ahead in our HTML, and I'm going to create HTML for this particular form. And just like the previous component, I will be actually copy pasting some CSS for its component. So I will come over here. I hope that you already know how to write CSS. It's pretty simple. I've already created a lot of videos in JavaScript, project-based videos in my channel. Check out the playlist of JavaScript if you want to learn about the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Node form, import, and then the button. All right, let's save it. Let's close it. Now let's come inside this HTML, and I'll start off creating with the div. All right, so I will be writing the class equals to, and I will start off giving it a node form. Okay, so inside this div, let's give it a heading and add new node. All right, so let's save it. Now let's go. You can see that this is how it's looking like. And inside below this, I will start off with creating a form. First of all, I need to give it a form group. This is the built-in attribute provided by Angular, form group. And I need to give it a variable name that I have just created that is taking the value of the form group. So this is the node form that I need to provide it to it. And you can see that its type is form group over here. All right, so node form, let's give the variable name over here. All right, and after this we can give the submit function, but that is something I need to create yet. So let's give it the label. A label is what this label belongs to. It belongs to the title input, which I just need to create. So this is actually the title. And after this, let's create an input, and it is of type text, and the name equals to title. And then we can actually give it an ID equals to title if we want to. And then we can actually give it a placeholder. Let's say this is the placeholder. And then we actually need to give it a form control name equals to title. All right, and this name inside it should match with the value of this title over here. It should be just like this. All right, we cannot change its value. Now let's copy this, and I'm going to make it some changes. So this is for the content. Let's try to change it to the content as well. Here, and then content over here. Place has to be the content. All right, and make sure this content is actually match the value of this content that we have created here. Okay, and at the end I will be creating a button. So I will be writing the type equals to submit, and inside it let's give it add new note. I will be modifying it because once we will be editing any note, I need to change the text of this button, but this is something I'll be doing after that. So let's save it. Now if I go over here, you can see that it's not looking so awesome, but it's still looking pretty cool. We have the title, content, and add a new note. All right, so we have created this form, and let's go ahead in our node form component.ts file, and I will be creating a new function that will receive when the form is submitted. So on submit is a function. Let's give it a void return type. It means that this function will not return anything. Okay, so let's try to validate if the node form is invalid. Okay, this is the benefit of form builder. It provides built-in functions. Then I'm simply going to return. I will not be doing anything. Okay, and if it is valid, I'll be taking a values of the node. So this node is of type node. Okay, this is how we can give some data types to different values. And then I can write this dot node form dot value. All right, and then I will be actually calling a service function that I yet need to create that will be responsible to store the values in the combined variable. We don't have the database, but we will be having a shareable variable that will contain an array of all the nodes added inside the service. Service is used to create the functions that can be used by multiple components. Okay. And service is also used to call any external APIs if we want to. All right, check out my previous video if you want to learn everything about that. And now we can actually reset the form. So this dot node form dot reset, this will make the values of these titles and the content empty. Means that when the new node is added, then I want the form to be empty. All right, and in between this I actually need to save it in nodes array of service. All right, so this is how we can add over here. All right, and now let's go inside the HTML, and I will be actually writing the on submit function this is the on submit function, and I will be calling the on submit function that I have just created. Actually, it's we need to actually in Angular, when we need to call a function, we need to wrap it in the parentheses over here, and it has to be the on submit. The S has to be the capital. All right, let's copy the name of the function that has to be called like this, and we have to add the parentheses here as well. All right, now when we will be clicking on add new note, we can actually see the values over here. So let's try to log this out. So console.log and then the note. I'm using the console ninja extension of VS Code that will directly log the values of this note over here in VS Code. We don't need to go to the actually browser console window to see the values. Let's save it. And now let's go over here. I hope that there won't be any error. So my title is something that I have given. This is my description, and let's click on it. Nothing happened, but if I come over here, I think this is not, has it triggered? Let's go over here. Let's go open up the inspect window console, and let's click on add a new note. It's not happening. Let's check it out. What's wrong here? So we have given the form type submit, and we have this on submit function over here as well. All right, so do we have this valid here? Let's log something over here. So console.log something over here to see if the form is valid or not. Debugging is a very important part of our work. So let's try to add some strings over here. Let's click on it, and actually this function is not getting triggered. I need to see what's wrong with it. Let's check HTML. So we have on sub. All right, I got it, guys. This has to be the ng submit, actually, not on submit. All right, so let's save it now, and let's go into the component. I will see if it works, and I'm going to add this. Click on it, and you can see that it is getting printed in the console window, but it has to be printing over here in my VS Code as well. All right, so now you can see that console log is actually printing the node, and it is printing exact values, ID, title, and the content of the form that we are actually passing it to this function. All right, so our functionality of filling the form values and getting the form values directly in on submit is working fine. I will just be removing this console log, and I know that it's working over here. Let's remove this over here. All right, so before actually start writing anything else inside it, let's go in our service. And service, as I've already told you, that is used to actually create a few functions, to call some APIs, or to create few variables that we want it to be shareable in multiple components in our project. Or we can also use it to create dependency injection concept or observables. Everything about this I've explained in my previous videos. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to import few stuff from Rxjs. Rxjs is an awesome library that gives a lot of built-in functions to create observables, to create different data. Okay, so first of all, I'll be writing observable from Rxjs. Then I will be importing the behavior subject. Behavior subject is actually used to sync data of the variables in multiple components, whoever wants to use that. All right, other functions like of, for also create observables, but those are not shareable in multiple components. I have created a separate video on difference between the subject and the behavior subject in my Angular tutorials playlist on my channel. You can check that out. All right, and now I will be needing an interface. So wherever I'm creating a note, it's always a good practice to add a data type to that variable, and the data type is our interface that we have created. So let's add the note. Okay, this is from the interface. So interface has to be // and we have the interfaces, and then we have the note. All right, so in this service, I'm going to create a variable first. So private, and let's create a variable, and let's give it a data type that I have added. So the data type is an array of note. Okay, and let's give the first initial value of the node an empty array. All right, so now after this I need to create a new variable that will be responsible to store these values and make this nodes array shareable in multiple components. And for that I will be using this behavior subject. So nodes subject is the variable name, okay, equals to, we have new behavior subject and it is of type node array, and the default value to it will be an empty array. All right, and for now that's pretty much it for creating the variables. We don't need to initialize or create any instance in the constructor. And I'm going to actually create a function with the name create node. Okay, and it's going to take the values of node, and the node is of type node. This is where I talked about initially that we can use interfaces for the variable types that can be added as a function props or as a return type. All right, so create node, it will not return anything, it will just update this array of nodes. Okay, I'll be creating another function that will return the values of these nodes using this behavior subject variable. Okay, so now it will not return anything, means we can pass the return type as an empty over here. So we can actually create a new node ID whenever a node gets generated. We want to increment it by length. We can use any way to generate the unique ID for the node. So node.id, since the ID is not being coming from the form, actually we are not giving the ID over here, we have to generate that ID manually. So this dot nodes dot length. All right, so by default, if the node length is 3, the ID will become 4. If the node length is 4, the ID will become 5. So this is how the nodes ID will be unique for all the nodes. All right, so but a better way to do it is to actually generate some kind of randomized functions, but for now we can work with it. So this dot nodes dot push, and then the node which is being passed from that component that we will be passing it, and then this dot let's create another function. I'm creating another function because we will be needing to actually use that. In fact, that function will be having only one line of code, so we can actually directly write over here. So this dot nodes subject, and then the next, and then this dot nodes. All right, so this variable is actually storing the values of the nodes as an observable, and as behave like that, it will be shareable to the multiple components in the parent component, in the nodes list component, and in the nodes form component as well. So this next is the built-in function that takes the whatever the value it needs to store, and obviously we need to pass the values inside it, which is matching this data type that we have given to this behavior subject. So this is what called the strict data typing. Okay, so after this we have actually created the node. I want to create another function that will return the values of all the nodes. Okay, so I will be writing the get nodes. I can name it observable. Okay, and it will be returning the observable of type an array of nodes. Okay, so it's giving an error because I'm not returning anything. So let's return this dot node subject as observable. As observable is the built-in function of this behavior subject variable, whatever we create. All right, for now we have this function for creating a new node and for getting a new node. All right, so let's go inside the form and call this function create node to store the values in this variable nodes. And after this we can actually call this function to actually get the updated values from the nodes. All right, so here I have already given the comment over here, and inside it I can use the service object that I've already created above. So node service, I will write dot actually, and it will give me all the functions that are available. The public functions, actually the variables that I created in that service were private, that's why those are not being shown over here. So we have the create node. Okay, and then inside it I can actually pass the node over here. All right, so once that is added, I can actually get the values in my function, but I don't need to get the values in this form. Form component is only responsible to create the notes. I need to actually get the values in this note list component. All right, but for testing I can actually call that function to print the values and see if the notes are successfully being saved or not. Okay, so after actually saving it, I can actually use this service, note service. This is just for testing. Okay, dot, and get notes observable. Whenever there is an observable, I actually need to get it using the subscribe function, so it will be returning us the notes. Okay, and we actually need to wrap it like this, and inside it I will just be console log the notes which is being returned from this variable. All right, we can actually give the data type to it, just like this within the parentheses, and it should, I'm expecting it to return an array of notes. All right, so let's save it now. Okay, and let's go over here, make sure you refresh these pages, and title, and then the content, let's try to add a note, and now you can see that it has actually printed out an array of all the notes. And here you can see that it is actually printing an array of all the notes, and it means that this is being stored in the behavior subject variable successfully. That's awesome. Yeah, so comment below if you are liking this video, and do subscribe my channel. I'm spending quite a lot of effort to actually make these videos. All right, so I'm just going to comment this for now because I will be using it in my other component, that is note list. All right, so for now let's go inside our note list and try to print out all of these note which are added in that service. All right, so inside this component I need to actually import few stuff at the top. So I will be just copy pasting that. So this is the interface that we need obviously, and this is the service that we need, and inside it we will be needing a component and on init, because whenever this component gets initialized I want this function to be automatically triggered. Event emitter will be used to actually pass the values back to any parent component using the output decorator that I'll just show you. Output will be used to create a variable for that event emitter. All right, so inside it I'm just going to actually create a new variable notes, and this will store the values of all the notes being coming from that behavior subject variable in the no services component actually. All right, so after this let's create a constructor, and inside it I'm going to create a node services object like this, and ng on init, let's try to implement that. So implements ng on init, and now I can actually use it like this. So here I can actually update this variable by calling that function. So I'm just going to cut it from here. Let's save it, and I'm just going to paste it over here. Let's uncomment this. So we have this notes, and rather than logging the notes I can actually use the variable this dot notes equals to the notes. Okay, this dot notes is this variable that we have added, and this note is coming from that service over here. All right, so now this variable is actually containing the values if that nodes array in that service is actually exists. So I'm sure that this will contain the notes, but I want to show it in the UI. So let's come over here, and I will be building some HTML to print out those notes. So first of all, let's add the div of class note list. All right, so this has been added over here, and now I will be adding the div. I need to iterate through all the nodes array, so I will be writing the ng for directive. I hope that you are already aware of that from the previous videos. This is used to iterate through multiple HTML elements using an array. And let's give it some class, and I can give it a class name as a note. Okay, so this div is going to be repeatedly printed on the UI, as much number of times as the length of this array of nodes. All right, this nodes is referring to this nodes variable over here, and one by one I'm storing the each node object in this one, so I can use this object to get the id, title and the content from this. So I can use first of all the h2, and I can use the interpolation with double curly braces, and I can use the node dot title, and it will fetch the title of the node from here. And now I can use the p, and now I can write the node dot content. Let's close it. And after this I can create the couple of buttons. One is for edit, another is for delete. So I will be using the click equals to edit node, and then I can write the node here. All right, so this is something I can give it name edit. Let's copy this for the delete node. It might throw an error because these functions are not yet existing in our component. I'll just be adding that. So for deleting, I will just be passing an ID of the node. Okay, so let's try to add the delete here. Let's save it. And yes, I was expecting this delete function and this edit node functions are not exist. Let's try to change its name delete node, and let's go first of all let's go inside the css, and I'm just be copy pasting the some styles over here. So let's close it. And now I'm gonna go to this component, and I'm going to add that service. Okay, so here I will be writing those functions. One is the edit node. Okay, and it will receive the value of type node. For editing the node, I will not be writing anything as of now. I just want to get rid of the error which is being added generated. So delete node, it will take the id of type number. Number is a built-in data type. We have not created it interface over here. So now if I save it, the error should be gone in the terminal. You can see errors are gone. Now let's go and check this out. Let's try to refresh in case something not go well. So I can write the title and I can write the content like this. Let's try to add a new node. All right, guys, it's looking so great. And this is how, and it is also showing that the data is shareable in multiple components. We have this service, and this is the variable. And this variable contains an array of nodes. And this, we can actually use this line of code to actually access the data of this nodes in any component in our project. There can be hundreds of components if we want to fetch the data, and this is one way that how we can make the data shareable in multiple components in Angular. For editing, I will be showing you another way like input output decorators, to that how we can create it a shareable data in Angular, just for learning purpose, so that you can understand each and every concept of Angular from this single video. All right, so we have actually generated. If I want to add a new node, let's add. Now you can see another node is being printed. The reason is that we are actually using ng for. So this div is actually iterating 2 times because the array length is 2 currently. All right, so now we are done with it. What we need to do now, let's try to implement the delete functionality first. After this, I will go ahead and move to the edit functionality, which is a bit lengthy. For deleting the node, let's go first inside the service, and I will be creating a new function inside it that will actually remove the particular node from this array. All right, so I will come here and I will start off writing with delete node, and it's going to take an ID of type number. There is no return type, right? And inside it, I will actually be using the nodes. Update the nodes equals to this dot nodes filter. Node dot id is not equals to the id which is being passed. Okay, I'm using the tab 9 extension of VS Code, which is helping me to write the code. Sometimes it gives a correct answer, sometimes I have to modify it a bit, okay, because it cannot understand the context what I'm writing over here. So what it's returning is, it's actually returning the updated nodes array, excluding the node that is matching with this id. Okay, and we have this updated array. Now what we need to do is we just need to actually update this variable observable. Okay, uh, like this one, we just need to write this line of code now. Okay, so what it will do is it will actually be updating this observable. So whoever is using this observable, whether it's this component, parent component, will be automatically informed that you are using an observable and the value within that observable has been updated. So you need to update that values as well. So this is the how powerful this behavior subject is. All right, so I'm just going to save it. Let's go inside this list and I will be writing some code over here. I will be using this dot node service dot, and then the delete node, I will be passing an ID. All right, so we can actually get some error handling by writing the subscribe, but it's not actually required here. So I think that's pretty much it we need to do over here. Let's refresh. The data is not persistent because we are not storing it in the local storage, or we are not using it a database. That is a different topic. I'm not actually explaining that concept because I have not explained that concept in my previous videos as well, previous 13 videos of Angular 16 crash course. All right, I will be talking about database integration in the upcoming videos. For now, the purpose is to understand the different concepts and how the logic is working in Angular. So I will be first creating a first title. All right, and let's create the second node. Let's create a third node. All right, so this has been, let's try to delete the second one. So I think it will be having an ID of 2, so 2 will be matching over here. So let's try to delete that. All right, so this has been deleted. Let's try to add another one, the long content one. Let's try to delete this one. Okay, so there is an error, and error is, I am assuming, is based upon the ID, because when we delete a particular node, then I'm going to use the new date. So using this date class, we can actually get the current time stamped. So I can write the get time, and I hope that it will return the unique ID because we have the milliseconds as well. So every millisecond it gets changed, even if the seconds is working here. So let's try to copy this and try to print what it prints in the console window. Since you can see that I have actually print over here, let's try to print it again. Now you can see that the last values have been changed to 29. So it's actually getting the current time of my system to print these values. All right, if I print again, these values are getting changed. So this is how I'm assuming that it's going to generate a unique ID. So let's try to copy this as well, and let's try to add it over here to generate the unique ID for a particular node. All right, rather than ID, let's add this semicolon. All right, so now let's save it, both of these files, and let's go and refresh the page and try to generate a few content here. Let's like this. Okay, and like this. Earlier what I did was I deleted this. Let's try to add another content. All right, I deleted the second one, so let's try to delete that. And yes, second one is successfully deleted. And now let's try to add a third one. Now let's try to delete the third one. All right, so it's working fine now. The issue was with an ID. Let's try to generate the content, and let's try to delete the first one. And yes, the ID issue have been resolved now. So for editing, there are three things we need to do. One is when we click on the edit button over here, we want this text on this blue button needs to be changed to the edit node. And also we want this content to be automatically added in this title and the content input text boxes. All right, and after that, once the edit text and the content is populated, we want to click on this button, the edit node, and we want the previously edited node to have the updated title and updated content here as well. So first of all, I'm going to update the text of this button whenever I click on any of this edit button. But again, we know that this list is in another component and this form is in another component. We need to use we need to use a state management system to actually share data between these two components. For this particular thing, I'll be using the same behavior subject. So over here, I will be actually creating a new variable and I'm going to name it is added. So let's create a private and I'm going to write the is added equals to new. Let's add the behavior subject, and by default I'm going to give it a value false because I want this edit button. I'm giving it a value that this edit button is not clicked automatically. All right. So after this, I'm going to actually add few couple of functions. First of all, just like this create note and this get note observable, I will be creating the set editable equals to boolean, and then I will be writing the is edit next value. Okay, whenever the edit button is going to be clicked, I'm going to call this function and this is going to be triggered, and this is going to update the value whatever is being passed from here in this variable. And in another component, we can use another function to get the value back of this particular variable. All right, so I will be creating another get editable. Okay, it will return us this dot is added dot as observable. All right, so these two functions are added here. Now we need to go to the nodes list, since this component contains that edit button, the list of those nodes. Okay, so I will come over here, edit node, and I will be actually calling that particular function to set that variable. So I will be writing this dot node service dot, and I will be writing set editable and then the true. Okay, so once it gets true, we actually don't need to actually we need this thing because we want to update the data as well after this. So let's leave it like this. Now let's go inside our node form component, and in here I will be actually creating a new variable that I can actually bind with the HTML of this component, since this button exists in the HTML of this nodes form component. Okay, so after this form group, I will be creating is added exclamation mark, make it optional, and give it so is added boolean. And in this constructor, I can actually call that get observable function, the editable. So I can use the node service dot get editable dot subscribe, and I will be using this object, and I can write the next response arrow function, and in these parentheses I can use the is added equals to response. Okay, so now what this constructor is actually doing is actually getting the value which is being updated from here, which is being passed over here, and this constructor is calling that function which is returning the value of that is added variable in the service, and I'm actually receiving that value in the response. And now I'm storing that updated value in this is added variable which is being stored over here. And now I can use this variable to update the text from my HTML. So let's go inside this form, and here I can use the ternary operator over here. All right, so I can use the interpolation, I can use the is added question mark edit note, otherwise add note. Okay, so let's save it and let's go, let's refresh, and now you can see that the add note is visible over here. Let's try to add a couple of notes. Okay, over here now I will be clicking on any of this edit button. So let's see if it works. If I click on edit note And yes, you can see that I have clicked on the edit node. This text have been updated. All right, this is just for our user experience, and we have got an understanding that how we can make the data shareable in various components. I've created ngrx video as well to that uses some redux concept. You can check that out to make the data shareable. And for sharing the content, I will be explaining you a different way to share the content, which is a bit lengthy, but you need to understand that how that thing works. Okay, so let's go ahead. The purpose of this video again is not to create note taking app, but to understand the different concepts of Angular. All right, so what I'm going to do is I will not be creating behavior subject for now. So let's come inside this notes list, and here this is actually giving it an editable. Now if I click on the edit button of this, each note, I want the content to be added in these text boxes. Let's see how we can make this data shareable. So what we can do is I can actually, since at the top you can see that I added event emitter and then the output. Okay, so output decorator is used to pass the whatever the data exists in this component to the parent component. Okay, so currently the parent component of this node list component is the app component. Parent component means any component that is using the selector of another component. So this app component is using these both selectors. So these both components are actually children of this parent app component. Okay, so we cannot actually share the data from one child component to another child component directly. We need to pass the data from nodes list component to the parent component, and then the parent component will be passing the data back to another form component. All right, so it's like passing the data back to parent and parent to another child. Two children cannot share data between each other directly using the input output decorator. All right, so what we can do is I can actually create a new variable over here in the nodes list actually. So I'm coming over here, and in here I will be actually creating output decorator. So let's see output, and we need to use these parentheses. I can name anything after this, and I can write event emitter, and event emitter is of type node. So since we need to pass the single node data back to the parent component. All right, so I can actually create another variable is edit mod. Okay, so this variable I will be actually using it to actually detect if I click on this button. Currently I've only updated the text, but I also need to handle that if the data is being added over here needs to be edited, or we need to add a new node in the list below. Okay, and I'm talking about the functionality, not only the text of this button. Okay, so I will be writing the is edit mod and then the boolean. It will just enable and show that what operation we need to perform. So is edit mod selector, and in this edit mod I can actually use this dot selected node dot emit, and then I can pass the node, okay, which is being passed from here. So this selected node is this one. Emit is a built-in function of the event emitter, and this is the return type of the node. So that's why we are passing the node. Now we need to receive this data of node in its parent component. So how we can receive that? I'm going to go inside this app.component.html, and inside it I can actually, this is the child component which is returning the data. So I can use the parentheses, I can use that variable selected node. Okay, and I can actually update a variable that we can add in this component. All right, so and that variable we will be passing again back in the form component. All right, so I will be writing let's say that the select node, which is the function that I yet need to create, I can pass an event to it. Okay, we can get the value of the node through this event function. So let's save it. It will throw an error because this function does not exist. I'm gonna go inside the app component, and here I will be creating that function that I've just created. So I will be writing the select node. I hope that this is the name, and this is going to be taking the value of type node. And let's try to create a variable now. So I'm going to create a selected uh, editable, so you don't get confused. Let's try to add the selected node, and it is off, make it optional. Let's try to update this selected node variable with the node being passed from that HTML. Let's try to import the interface. Quick fix interface. Now the error is gone. All right. So this variable is now containing the node data which is being passed from that node list component, child, passing data from child component to the parent component. I'm just going to save that. Okay. And what is the error here? So we have argument after is not assignable to parameter of type node. Okay, so let's see what happens. So we have this selected node and then the select node event. So here we have we need to see if this is the variable being passed from the node list. So we have this selected node output. All right, so this has to be added here. And now I've actually need to pass it back to the node form component. Let's try to pass that for now. So for passing the value using the input decorator, I need to use the square brackets. So the selected node, and I can actually give it a variable name, the selected node. Okay, and this variable name actually exists here, this one. All right, and this is something I need to create within this node form component, since I'm passing it within the node form component. All right, so let's go inside the node form component, and here I actually need to add that input decorator to add its value. So I will be using an input decorator at input, and I can write the selected node optional and then the of type node. Okay, so let's save it. Now that error is gone, but this error is coming from argument of type event is not assignable to the parameter of type node which is being passed event. So after saving all of the files, the error is gone. Actually, I did not save this node form component. All right, make sure you save all the files, and still, if it doesn't work, don't just stop the server and rerun the Angular project. Okay, sometimes it happens. All right, so now what we need to do is let's recap what we have done. Here we have passed the value from the child component, emitted the node, and received it in the parent component in this variable. And then from this component, we have passed back to another child component like this over here, receiving it from the child component, calling a function, updating a variable in this app component, and then using this variable selected node to pass its data in the node form component. And this is the variable within the node form component using the input decorator. Input decorator is used to receive the value from a parent component, and output decorator is used to return the value from the child component to the parent component. All right, so let's come over here, and this variable should be containing the edited value in this variable. All right, but sometimes what happens is we don't refresh the page, and this component does not get mounted again. This component does not get reinitialized because this form component is already visible. This component will only be reinitialized when we will refresh our page, or we will be navigating from another page to this page, then this component will be reinitialized. So in this case, the ng on init will not be triggered again when we will be clicking on the edit button, and neither the constructor is going to get triggered. So there is another lifecycle hook which is called the ng on changes. I've explained ng on changes and all 8 lifecycle hooks of Angular in one single video on my channel in Angular tutorials playlist. You can check that out to learn all about all lifecycle hooks. Okay, so here I have already added this ng on changes as I added at the start of this video, and also I need to implement it over here on changes. All right, so now I need to add this. Ng on changes is used to detect the values of the input variables coming from the parent component without reinitializing or remounting of that component. Okay, this is a very major benefit of this. So here I can actually write the ng on changes, and it receives the simple changes in it, and this changes variable actually receives an array of all the input variables available in any particular component. Okay, so now I can actually use check if changes selected node, and then I can write the question mark dot the current value is the built-in variable. Okay, so there can be more than one input variable, so I only need to detect if the selected node is changed or not, if its value have been updated in the parent component or not. Okay, so this is where it will exist. So then I can actually get the value. If its value gets changed from the parent component, I can write the value changes selected node and then the current value. Okay, and after this I can use this variable node form to actually use this dot node form dot patch value is a built-in function of this node form builder. So patch value is a function, it takes an object, and now we can actually pass these values for id. Id equals to the value dot id, and then the title equals to the value dot title. Okay, and then content colon value dot content. All right, so now this node form value is going to be updated from the list, and whenever it's going to be patched from here, it's automatically going to get updated in our node form variable, and our HTML should be automatically showing the data for the updated value. So let's see, make sure you save all the files. I hope that you are understanding what I'm doing over here. Let's refresh this as well. All right, so let's try to add couple of nodes over here. All right, let's click on the edit now. Let me add an integers as well so we understand which node exists. So I click on this edit one. All right, so now you can see that 2424 and the content are being added over here, and I can click on this edit node here. Let's try to click on the first one, and yes, the content of this first node is being added over here, and title, content, and also this edit node. All right, the last thing we need to do is when I click on this edit node, I actually need to call a service function which I yet need to create to update the data of that particular node. All right, so let's go ahead in the service, and I'm going to create another function that will be responsible for updating the node. This function is going to be a bit longer, so I'm going to create the updated node, and it's going to take updated node of type node, and it's going to have a return type void. And here I can actually first get the index of the node which needs to be edited. There can be multiple logic that you can write, but this is how I can actually write my logic. So I can actually write this code: index node.find index, passing the node of this nodes array. Node.id is equal to updated node.id. I've got the index. All right, and now I need to check if the index actually exists or not. So if node is not equals to -1 and -1 here, if node exists, then I can actually update the nodes array. So this dot nodes and then the index equals to updated node, and after this I can actually use the same function here. this one, node subject next, and this is going to update this behavior subject variable, and whoever is using this variable will be automatically gets updated. All right, so now I actually need to save it. Let's come inside this node form, and here I have this on submit button. Inside the on submit button I have this variable is edit. Okay, detecting this, I can actually detect whether I need to call the create node function or I need to call the update node function. Okay, so this is another thing we have to, this is the another purpose that we have added over here. So after this we have got this node, I can actually check if this dot is edit function, uh, and I can write this dot node service dot update node, and inside it I can actually pass the node which is being passed, which is being figured out from here. Okay, else I need to create a create node. All right, and once I'm done with editing or create node, in both the cases this is going to be reset. Okay, and once the edit is done, I want this variable is added back to false because I want the text on this button back to add node from the edit node. Okay, so here I can actually call the same service, node service dot set editable, and I can pass the false. Okay, this there is too much work, but one thing I figured out that I created this variable over here. It is not actually needed. I forgot that this variable already exists in our form component. All right, so now let's try to figure out and test if everything is working fine or not. And we are pretty much done with our note taking application covering all the major topics of Angular. So let's try to add the title one and then the content one. Let's try to hit enter, and it's working with the enter button as well. And now I'm going to create a title 2 and the content 2, hit enter. So this has been added. Okay, now let's try to see if delete is working as well. Yes, delete's working. Let's try to add the title 2 again and then the content 2 again. Okay, so this have been added. Let's try to click on the first one, edit. All right, so text has been changed, the content is added over here. Let's try to add a double one and the double one with this title and the content one. Let's try to click on the edit node. Okay, it's working cool and perfectly fine, and our state is getting updated from this form to the service, and service is actually broadcasting the message to all the components whoever is subscribed to this data from that service, and all the subscribers are getting updated through that variable which is being stored in the behavior subject in our service. All right, I hope that you have got an idea. If you have liked this video, if you have learned something new, do subscribe my channel, guys. I'm spending quite a lot of time building these videos. I'll be creating more videos and I'll be creating more project-based videos using Angular 16. Do subscribe my channel, hit the like button, comment below if you have any question. Thank you so much for watching, guys. See you in the next video.